Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I am hanging out with Sean Ellsworth, and he is from Tribality. You may have heard of it. It's a huge website on the internet for RPGs, news, and reviews. And you guys actually started really right around the same time we did. I think we both launched in 2014.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, kind of when that playtest was just ending.
Yeah, so I've been aware of you guys for a long time. You guys, because right from the beginning, you guys have put out really high quality content, and your website has always been super clean.
I guess that's a compliment. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, we try to come out of the gates with a decent site. I mean, it started out where I just had a small little blog, and then Michael Long, co-founder of Tribality, he had the biggest Facebook group for fifth edition. That was kind of weird because it was, I don't know if it was called D&D Next or fifth edition. It was, kind of that summer before the Player's Handbook came out, right? And I remember I got an early copy. Somehow Amazon sent me the starter set by mistake, like a week or two early or whatever, and I didn't even know what to do with it. Now I'd be like blogging and everything. I'm like, hey, I got the starter set. Like, I didn't even know what to do. So I put it up on my blog that nobody went to. But then, Michael was in my fourth edition D&D group on Roll20. And he mentioned this Facebook group. I'm like, yeah, Lane, whatever. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Mike. Yeah, we'll join your group, whatever. Next thing you know, he's got over 100,000 people on it, a few years later. So. But yeah, he had that, and I had my blog, and we kind of put the two together, and just started posting. He was posting stuff on Facebook. I was posting stuff on the blog, and we brought some more authors on over the next year. So, we usually have about 5 columnists at a time, and we just try to write about, mostly fifth edition, but kind of more agnostic, or we'll cover Pathfinder, or whatever else. Some of us like Conan or Star Trek, or some of the, Star Wars, some of the other things flying around.
You guys are like we're like for the longest time like the shadow cabal of D&D. Because I'm like, as someone in the niche in the industry, I'm always like curious to who's doing what and checking out other people's stuff, and it took me a while to figure out who was behind Tribality.
Well, yeah, because we were just nobodies, right? Like, we weren't former writers. I mean, I was just somebody who's like halfway through fourth edition being like, I don't think I've played D&D since like 1989 or something. Like, I've been reading the books and whatever else, right? But I just got busy with school and then starting a family, and I'd always like passed by that section of the bookstore, gone to nerd stores and everything. But it's just been so long, and then Roll20 came along, and I'd be like, hey, maybe I could try that out. And then my daughter is like, I don't know what she was. She was 10 or 12 or something, and she's like, hey, I want to play D&D. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of random. Like, where'd you hear about that? And we went to the bookstore, and I picked up the fourth edition red box because it was looking at us. I'm like, I knew about Pathfinder and everything, but I was just looking. It was like, a zillion books. And for whatever reason, fourth edition was pretty lowly stocked at my local bookstore. So we just grabbed that box and started playing with that. And that worked out.
How old was your daughter when she asked to play D&D?
I think she was like 10. It was like, yeah, it was kind of like, probably maybe she was 9. She was pretty young.
How does
I don't know where it came from.
That is weird. Did she never told you where she even heard of it from?
Yeah, like I think maybe we were watching Adventure Time or something like that, and I kind of mentioned that Adventure Time was about that a little bit, and maybe that kind of got. Maybe she looked it up or something. I don't know, or maybe she asked me. Like, I probably told her something in passing, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I used to play that. Like, we were watching Adventure Time or something like that.
You planted the seed and didn't even know it.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. So it was really my daughter that brought me back into it, because I kind of skipped third edition, right? I just, I'd been flipping through the books and buy this and that, but I was more of a reader at that time. I was reading the, I don't know, whatever Eberron or Dragonlance novels and stuff came out. So I was a fan. One of those things. It doesn't. The whole idea of it doesn't matter what kind. Maybe you just watch a stream. Maybe you just read the books. Doesn't mean you're a bad fan. There's all kinds of fans of RPGs, as long as they're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's been a thing recently, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, you never know when somebody's going to come back. I mean, I'm not old enough to be a grognard or anything, but I mean, I definitely played first edition. I never played any of these little pamphlets or anything, but yeah, way back.
Right. I think everyone's definition, depending where you fall in the timeline, on grognard is different.
Oh, I just know because we didn't play it well, and we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we didn't know anything about it. We just, like, if we weren't playing D&D, we were picking up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever else. Like for us, it was just another thing that we were like playing that week, right? Listening to Weird Al, whatever, being nerds in the 80s, right?
For me it was kind of odd in the sense that we started with D&D, and then like for a summer or two we just played like a session or two of like everything. And then we kind of like went back to D&D, and the group that would later become Nerdarchy kind of formed, and we then just played D&D for several decades with very little variance.
Yeah, that's that you guys were playing hard the whole time when I was during that gap.
Yeah, like when my son was born and he came home from the hospital, it was like I think it was like during a game night. So so he rolled his first D20, which we talked about that before. And guys, of course, I don't recommend putting small chokeable items into your children's hands.
You got to get the oversized plush D20 for your kids that they make now. So they've thought about that. They have it covered.
Yeah. Well, we didn't think about it back then, 17 years ago or so.
No, well, the products wouldn't have existed. Right now, it's like, how many different plush dice do you need?
So did your blog become Tribality?
Well, Tribality was something I was looking at making a community, and it was just going to be like a general like topic community way back around 2000, and I just happened to make Tribality like as the domain. So I've owned the domain since like I guess the turn of the century or whatever, and then
I would say about 2005.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so I bought it like 2005, and then I didn't do anything with it really. Like I kind of had a thing up, and I had the brand, and then I'm like, I'm gonna put up a blog, and I'm like, I guess I'll put up Tribality, and I just started writing about D&D because that's right around the time when, I was getting like pretty heavy into fourth edition, and I wasn't like developing yet like I do now. Like I wasn't homebrewing and developing and doing all the the professional publishing, but I was getting pretty hard into it. And like I'm a computer programmer. I know I've talked to some lawyers and I've talked to some programmers, and I guess like reading like all the clauses or whatever you want to call them, statements, if you do programming language of D&D, being able to kind of homebrew and parse your way through that isn't as hard, I guess, for some people who are more used to living in a world of natural language. So yeah, I think I went and wrote an article about rules lawyering or something, and there was somebody who they have a games table and they're all lawyers. And that made me laugh. And he went and said, "This is awesome," because I was talking about using legal in your game or something like that. It was the funniest thing I've seen. Like, there's a lot of crazy things that happen when you blog every week, but having a table of rules lawyers comment about my story about using the law in your game, I just seemed surreal and meta and all kinds of stuff.
That is pretty funny. The attorney we use is actually a gamer as well. So, and that's like one of the cool things. Like we just had a doctor on the show yesterday, and we have an ER doctor that plays in our game. So it's really cool to see where the hobby's gone.
When you have that real life specialist in the game, like, I'm a computer programmer, so like I make websites. So, I mean, I guess I'd be really good in Shadow run, right?
Yeah.
I'd be able to like, apply some of the knowledge there, right? But like in D&D, it's completely useless. But I know people who I've played with who have like, careers. Like I worked as a historical interpreter one summer, and I was a blacksmith, and the woodshed boy or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so like I know a little bit about blacksmithing, and like I can bring that into the game the odd time. But I know people who worked in the military or like served or whatever, and people who've had like careers where they're work at Ren fairs or whatever, and like it's applicable stuff to them, right? Because they can like, no, actually you do it like this. It's like, all right, I'll take your word for it. There's no rule for that. We'll just run with it. So
well, I hope it wasn't insulting to describe your site as looking clean. I didn't realize you did.
No. It's just because when I make websites, for a living, and I've never had time on Tribality to go and do like the full custom treatment. So a lot of times, we'll just take one of those kind of templates and tweak it or whatever. So it always has that clean look or whatever, but you don't want to go too. I remember when we first built the thing, I'm like, well, if I'm going to make something in this industry, there's a lot of websites that aren't clean. So I kind of almost intentionally position it as like pretty good. And we kind of stepped it up since, and we've been working on a branding. But I remember the first time we made the site, it was definitely just threw up a template to get a blog out there really quick. And, wasn't like, the weeks and weeks of work it takes to put up like a, fully customized blog or whatever that I do in my day job.
Yeah, so I'm kind of our webmaster, unfortunately.
So you know what I'm talking about.
No, and that's the problem. So
No, but you know what I mean by like it's hard to, your position is like we want to make it good enough, and then that's like a miracle.
yeah, yes,
when you can get it to that point.
yeah.
So,
The way
I don't think these. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the way it looks now is so much better than when we first started, and that took a while. It took a while to get to there.
Well, you guys have a good brand. I mean, that's the most important thing, right? That's what people connect with. If your website's a little wonky, this or that. I mean, you look at a lot of the people doing all right. They got some kind of weird little brand to go and connect to. I mean, Gnome Stew's got their pub stew of gnomes, right? You guys have your goblin, and we have our little mask guy, so it doesn't hurt.
Sweet. Fantasy Grounds, thanks for the super chat. Spring break Fantasy Ground Gaming at FGC all week till Easter. Very cool. Go check those guys out. They're super helpful.
Speaking of Fantasy Grounds, so I'm just working with Doug, who runs Fantasy Grounds right now. We're trying to get some of our content on there. So we're in the kind of in the final figuring out of that. So hopefully we can announce some official stuff on that. But some of our materials that we've been publishing over the years at Tribality will be showing up for anyone who uses at VTT.
Cool. Doug is a great guy over there at Fantasy Grounds. I've had several conversations with him, and they've all been really good. He's just super laid back and chill.
Yeah, well, it's nice when someone's chill in business as well. So that's what it is. So I'm pretty pumped. I'm sure this is going to go really well. So. Yeah.
You guys are also publishing as well, not just the content on the website, but you guys are publishing through DriveThruRPG. Yeah,
well, what happened was some people were saying like, "Hey, these articles are great. Put up a PDF." I'm like, "It's a blog. How am I going to make money from a PDF?" Like go and click on our ads or go and visit our website, and if you need to print it out, print it out. And then I went and thought about it. I'm like, well, they're not asking for anything too crazy. I guess we could put a PDF up of some of the things because I know what it's like. You just want to print up a one pager. You don't want to have to figure out how to get rid of all the web junk, right? And then from there, I talked to my, I'm in web design, as I mentioned. So I talked to my graphic designer. I'm like, can you whip something up quick? And then he comes up with this amazing template that we use for Tribality. I'm like, okay, well, that's a little better than some of the stuff out there. I mean, maybe we should just put this up. So we started doing a Patreon and telling people that, hey, if you support us, you guys can get the PDFs. And, oh, by the way, anybody else, I guess, can grab them if they want to pay on DriveThruRPG. And then they started doing pretty well. Like, we got a few gold sellers, and yeah, you never know. I guess people want their stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. It looks like you guys have a nice little collection over there. You've been building up, and so we kind of like have dabbled with this stuff. Like we were talking, and our paths have been very similar because you guys, even though you maybe had the website for a while, you got really started, hit the ground running around the same time we did. So it's funny to see some of the similarities, some of the growing pains.
Yeah, and you guys really know your stuff, and some people out there don't. So we always tried to, when we were writing, like when I first started, I wrote like a beginner stuff because I wasn't someone, I took that break. So when I was writing my articles, I'm like, hey, it's like your first day DMing. Like I was always taking that approach. And then as I evolved and matured as a game master or dungeon master or whatever else, I started writing more hardcore stuff or whatever you want to call it, right? Because that's where your interests go. Because, I'm dealing with problems like, hey, how can I make inspiration better or something versus like, how do I make this spell? How do I cast spells? So, you kind of, you move along the continuum as you play and as you run, for sure.
So you said you guys do 5 columns a week, same writers. So who do you got in the stable going right now, and what are the columns?
Well, our longtime writers are, so we have Michael and I, we started, and then Rich Howard and Jan Perkins jumped on, and they both moved on to whatever. Like Rich is focusing on podcasting, but I think he's going to write a little more. And James just a professional writer, and he got he had a crazy awesome Kickstarter for his Salt and Woods campaign setting. So those two are alumni, and they show up the odd time. And then right now, I'm gonna forget someone. Let me bring up this thing because I don't
Sorry,
want to
put you
forget
on the
any.
spot.
Well, no, I just don't want to forget anyone because it's like just gonna bring up the thing. But yeah, so like I haven't been writing as much because I've been doing some development and trying to do some of the business type stuff. But I always try to publish on Friday, and then we had Michael. He got busy because his life got in the way, so he hasn't been publishing as much. But definitely we've had our regular contributions have been Brandis Stoddard, who helped me edit the Naval Combat I just put out, and then we have Colin McLaughlin, who's been on there for almost as long as Brandis, and we have two of our newer writers, which are Jesse Colhoun and Blake Ryan, who I think they've both been with us one for just around a year now, or just over a year. So that's pretty good. And then we have guest writers and stuff too.
So like part of my background is like I just kind of like geek out on numbers and kind of playing with traffic online or playing in traffic online, as you might say. And you guys get a lot of traffic on your website.
Well, the reason I think that we were like, we got a couple Emmy nominations. So I think it comes from two things. One, we started writing decent stuff. Like we had real writers. Like, I kind of always said that I was the guy who ran the site and I was a bit of a hack. And, I'm a decent writer. I mean, I got a history degree or something. But, with Rich and JM, we had really good writers. And then we had me coming in from the angle of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to write about that. And then, Michael's been playing D&D for like, a long time, like you guys, right? So I don't know if was playing on the little pamphlets or not, but he's pretty close. So, he's got years and years of playing everything too. And so he came in from that angle. But he had the Facebook group. So really, we were posting good stuff on Facebook. We were posting good stuff on our blog. And I think that's probably what helped. But, there's lots of people putting out good stuff out there. And I think it was just the fact that any one of us, like Rich had his own blog. I had my own blog, which we converted into Tribality. Brandis has his own blog still. I think the idea was that none of us were going to reach the audience or be able to go and, some of the, personal blogs, they kind of have that, hey, look, I built a WordPress.com or whatever, something like that kind of look. And I think that, being part of a brand is a little bit, you're going to get a bigger draw there too. So if someone comes in to read my stuff because they're like a new DM, and then they're reading, some of the, homebrew stuff that Rich was writing, like all these like, undersea classes or stuff that Brandis writes, which is like these crazy reviews, like, something like Xanathar's comes down, he'll write like a 10-part review of it. And, people like that, right? Because it's super in depth. So there's something for everyone. And, with 5 different writers, you're going to be able to reach a different audience than with a single one. Just like, there's all of you. And when one of you is sick or, has a kid getting married or has to go off to jail or whatever you guys do, yeah. There's somebody else to go and run the video that week or post the blog or whatever else. And, especially, you guys have a stable of authors and guests and whatever else that, the best people to get content from sometimes isn't even yourself because it brings a new perspective and gives you free content, right? Like, right now, you don't have to go and figure out what to do for an hour. You just, ask me a couple questions.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, and like you said, it's just new perspective. And that's what's kind of cool for us about doing the website as well is none of us write on the website anymore. In the beginning, we all did, but now we just have other writers do it. And so people can get our perspective, over on YouTube, and then they can go to the website and they get different perspectives. And sometimes the writers will take one of our videos and do something, do an article around that. So it's even cooler because then it's like the different perspectives on the same topic.
One of the things I always think about is that if I didn't have Tribality, I'd be putting these things up. Maybe I'd have them sitting on what's the non-drive-through RPG one? The DM's Guild, right?
Yeah, DM's Guild.
I'd be putting up if I had something that was a big hit on Reddit and got peer edited enough, I might put something up on DM's Guild. But I never would have the reach or the number of things I put out to go and be able to go and get something that is a gold seller and it shows up on Fantasy Grounds or whatever else. So I think that the fact that we all came together versus just being there's great people doing amazing homebrew stuff on, behind the screen and D&D, was it Next, or, on Reddit, like, the homebrew stuff going up there. I mean, I don't steal it, but I don't mind reading it and taking some ideas or whatever else, or it helps me figure out. And, I put my stuff up for a peek as well. And, there's definitely people doing, as good or better work than, Mike Morales or the pros or anybody. I mean, because, all you need is a good idea and a good concept and a, strong grasp of the mechanics, or let someone else go and tell you how you screwed up the mechanics. But, it's that strong concept. Like Mike Morales has that great thing going on right now where he's breaking down, building the 5e Warlord or whatever, right?
Yeah, the happy hour.
Yeah, you can see that madness. And, it's he's just someone who, when you write the game, you have a lot better understanding of the mechanics than somebody who's trying to hack a werewolf class together because one of their players asked for it, or whatever misfortunate idea somebody has. I know I made a werewolf prestige class.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. Like, I was kind of like surprised and disappointed they ditched the prestige class idea for 5e. And it was a combination of lack of interest, and I think there was a balancing issue with getting different abilities from at different levels for your classes. I think was one of the things that wreaked havoc with it as well.
Well, I wrote two. I wrote a werewolf one, and we play tested that one, and I wrote a Solamnic, I'm pronouncing it wrong probably, knight for Dragonlance.
Okay, yeah.
So the idea was that, you take the oath of the crown or the oath of the whatever it is. I can't remember. I've read 20 books. You think I'd be able to remember the difference between the three? But yeah, like, whether it was the rose or the crown, I can't remember which one. Or maybe I had like, pass for all three of them, or two of them anyway, not the one that where you're all nobility. But the idea was that, you pick it up at a certain level, and I could never find that sweet spot. So I was kind of like, I don't like prestige classes because, well, if my player picks it up at level 8, then they're garbage compared to the rest of the party. And if they pick it up at 12, like these things are too, they're then, or no, so the other way around. If they pick it up early, then it's overpowered. If they pick it up late, it's useless. But for flavor, my player, he was like a captain of a pirate ship, and he got bit by a werewolf, and he just wanted to go and start getting werewolf abilities bit by bit. So for him, it was flavor. So I think prestige classes are a great way to kind of say, hey, for 5 levels, I don't really want to go and become a rogue or a warlock. I want to go and become something stupid. And, can we go and come up with something where, I'm not, going to be able to, I'm still going to be able to hit that dragon at level 10 like everybody else. So I think they're really good for that. So I think prestige classes could be, the same as like the Mystic that came out. Remember, it was 5 levels or whatever, right? I mean,
well, I think they did a couple versions.
But I mean the original one, right? Like like a prestige class is pretty much just like a little quick thing like that. So you're just gonna you have to start it up a little higher, or it's not. If you treat it like, hey, I want a multi-class for 5 levels, what's something cool I could go and do for this concept? Is not as hard as saying like, hey, how do I go and do better than like what the warlock and rogue get at level 11? Like, like that's a lot harder thing to develop, I think.
To me, it's a lot like multi-classing. You do it for more options and to do interesting things. But if you really just want to be better, just stick in one class, because the high level abilities are always better.
Right, but I mean, like, if I'm going to go and multi-class into a 5e warlock, for example, say it was, I don't know, started as a rogue or something, it doesn't matter. And, I'm going to be giving up level 6 rogue stuff, and I'm going to be picking up level 1 stuff. Well, I feel like the prestige class the prestige class is supposed to be, even though it's the level 1 of the prestige, it's supposed to be like as good as that level 6 or as good as that level 11, which is, what makes them a little bit harder for me to work with, I guess. And I think that might be one of the reasons. But I don't even know if that was a design choice on them. Maybe they were supposed to just be like multi-classing. So there really wasn't guidance on that, right? Because prestige classes are all over the place between Pathfinder and 3.5 and whatever else, right?
And now we may never know. So
you know what? That's okay. I'm sure we'll get a chance to look at them all over again in Pathfinder 2. So.
I'm also thinking if I look in the DM's Guild, I will find them as well if I really, really wanted them. James Leslie has a question for you. Aside from just continuing to write, is there Any tips you recommend to help transition a writer from an amateur writer to a more professional level writer?
I am an expert on that topic. I think the best thing to go and do, like I said, there's people writing amazing stuff on Reddit. They don't even have a blog. There's people with these small little blogs. Blog, share what you have. There's a DM out there with your problem. I can't tell you how many times I've had a problem where I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to fix this. I Google it, and the only person who wrote about it is me. Well, that's not tooting my own horn. I'm mad. Like, I want someone else to have written about it, right? I don't even care if it's good or bad. I just want another perspective. So, the more times people put stuff out there, and then people can comment on it. And, if your blog starts picking up, offer a guest post on some of the bigger blogs for exposure. I know way back when Michael of Tribality, he guest posted on Gnome Stew, or, we were doing guest appearances on the DMs block and all these other things. And, they were people that were growing. We were like, we were growing, me showing up here brings some of my audience over maybe. And, some of your audience might check out Tribality. So whether you're on the first day of blogging, like I was in April 2014, during the playtest and trying to figure out what this mass combat was going to be, when they were doing some of the previews of 5e, I think that was one of my first blog posts. It's just garbage. I don't even know what I wrote about it. It's probably just like rephrasing a press clipping. I don't even know. But I was like, hey, this is cool. Like someone, because I was interested in the mass combat, right? And, that piece of garbage could just be someone's personal blog out there, but somebody else looks up mass combat like, oh yeah, that's cool. And they comment on it. And, so my advice would be, just keep writing, and if you don't pick up an audience, you're sharing your ideas with someone, good or bad, and some idiot who doesn't know what they're doing is going to Google it and find out, and your mistakes are going to be his treasure or her.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, the biggest thing is just anything you want to get good at, you just need to do it over and over again, and maybe get it critiqued. Well, for us, one of the best things that happened was. We had someone that actually used to work in newspapers come on our website as a writer, and then they took over like the editorial duties, and then they tapped one of the other writers who also happens to work in newspapers to be an assistant. And Ty eventually left and moved on doing other things, got too busy, and Doug took over, and he just does an amazing job over there. And even if someone is not like a top-notch writer, he just brings them up so much higher because he's such a great editor. And that was one of the things that helped take the website to the next level, is when we started getting the editors in there.
I mean, I don't want to see a bunch of typos or something that looks like it's been loosely written, but if someone has a great idea and maybe they're not the strongest writer, but they've written hey, here's 10 cool things to do in an elven village. If they're creative, I'll take that any day over someone who's boring and well written.
Oh yeah, I mean that's literally the first 3 years of our website. So was us writing on there. I got for the longest time our most viewed article was something that I wrote, and I had shared it over on Reddit, and they just pulled out the red marker. It was awful. I was traumatized.
Yeah, Reddit is you got to have a thick skin, because if it's on Reddit and someone's going to criticize it, if the criticism's coming from a good place, then I'll accept it. If it's just coming from I don't like this because I'm angry, I don't want to hear that. But yeah, I've been torn into, and it can be stupid stuff. I remember I wrote an article or something, and I went and said that I don't know, it was Xanathar or someone. I said that one of the big D&D famous people I said was from Forgotten Realms instead of Greyhawk or something. It was something I know, right? Be like saying, oh yeah, Raceland's from Greyhawk. It'd be like, of course you know that, right? But I just typed it wrong, and then someone's just like, well, I stopped reading at that point. I'm like, you know what? I screwed up. I get it. If you think that someone who runs a D&D blog doesn't know that's an interesting perspective. That's cool. Maybe I don't know the difference between Forgotten Realms and Everon. Which one is your ships?
I affectionately refer to Reddit as the douchiest place on the internet, because you get a lot of those comments. Constructive criticism is one thing, but oh, you made this one mistake, I'm not reading anymore. You forgot the comma. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was just whatever it was, right? It
So
was just a matter of like I misplaced a Xanathar or Volo or somebody like that. I can't remember which one it was or what typo it was. It was just, but you know what? I'm still beating myself up over it. So thank you, Reddit. I'll feel the shame for the rest of my life.
yeah. So in the beginning, you said you like to, you're writing all beginner stuff. So what kind of stuff do you like to write now?
I still like to write beginner stuff. I really like to explore campaigns now. Like that's kind of what my obsession is because I'm really working on, I never did a full homebrew campaign. I'd always like made my own village or whatever else, but making a world is tough. Like, oh, I'm going to build a homebrew. So you start with a village and, you draw a coastline and you steal somebody else's gods or whatever else and you take, but, you go and make your own world. That's tough. I mean, like, you look at what like Aram made with God's Fall. He made his own magic system. like, like that's a lot of work, right? And you're homebrewing races and you're making classes that fit the world, and it's a lot of work. So that's kind of what my obsession is now, because I want to make the ultimate seafaring campaign. That's the world. That's what my goal is. It's something that isn't just pirates or isn't just Vikings or somewhere that I could go and run a heist in the big city still, or that I can go and kill giants in the north. So trying to do that kind of, hey, it's a world that has everything like Forgotten Realms, but the big difference is you got to sail everywhere instead of walking across an endless continent. Like I don't even know how you get from the Sword Coast to somewhere else in Forgotten Realms. Like I guess you walk a lot of times on one of these roads, and hopefully you don't get attacked by bandits and everything. So that, and I'm making fun of it, but I mean that's what I'm trying to do in my homebrew world, which I call Vidari, which is to take that overland walk, to take that I'm on a wagon and put them on a sailboat or an airship or whatever else, regardless of whether they're going to be pirates. Maybe they just want to be merchants. Maybe they're just trying to get point A to point B. And there's lots of that in the Sword Coast where you got the some islands off the coast, or you go north and south. But that whole, I got to get all the way to this or that, and the big overland journey, and that just doesn't exist because my biggest island might be 50 or 100 miles wide, right?
So are you running nautical campaigns now?
Yeah, I ran a whole nautical campaign for a year and a half. So that's where I got into writing. I wrote a guide for steampunk heroes. I wrote a guide for pirate heroes, and then I wrote the naval combat, and all those came out of playtesting, in game. And there's been some disasters. I think I homebrewed the whip, and my rogue got a hold of it, and he just started destroying everything at level 1 or 2. So I'm like, no, hard pass on that, get rid of that one. But yeah, like when things are homebrewed and you play them and they kind of come from necessity out of a campaign, they have a little bit more of a feel than like, hey, I'm gonna go and build something in a lab, in a clean laboratory. So yeah, so that's I'm looking right now. I'm running Tomb of Annihilation in Eberron. And after that, we're going to be probably going back into Vidari for season 2. And I'm working on a complete kind of keeping 80% of the original campaign and rebuilding it, remapping it, that kind of thing. Because there's things that the players and I added to it that made it good. And we got homebrew races like sea dwarves. I mean, like it's not something you hear about all the time. Like one of my players came up with sea dwarves. I'm like, well, I guess they're sea elves. Why can't there be sea dwarves? And like they're mining down in like some trench a mile down under the sea, right? And like they're short and stocky because they got to be able to handle the pressure and all that.
I think we did a like dwarf crab tar race that we toyed with. Also, RA did Prowies in his Demon Saga world, and they were like seafaring dwarves, and they had barrel boats. So they weren't aquatic, but they were seafaring. They had barrel boats, and they were shaped like barrels, and they would pedal, and they were pedal powered.
Like anything like that's just going to go and add to it. Where you just come up with something. It seems like some stupid, crazy gimmick or whatever, and like that could be next thing they're the big bad, right?
Yeah, it's all right.
There's a cracking guy in a barrel.
I'm a sucker for gimmicks, so. That sounds like a lot of fun. I don't think we've done any full-blown nautical campaigns in the whole time. We've like quick jaunts out at sea, but we haven't done the full-blown campaign. I also take it you're a fan of Black Powder.
Yeah. So what I wanted to go and do was, I mean, I'm obsessed with it. I like Eberron and Dragonlance. Like so I always play and kill the dragons. Typical medieval setting, or like so I play Dragonland. I'll play Kryn or Nentervale, right? Fourth edition's default setting. So those are the that's where I normally will go and play, or I want to go and play in some outlandish whatever with airships and all the rest, like Final Fantasy, Eberron, or like my world, right? So something where like sailing ships and airships can be there, and magic and technology are side by side, and a gunslinger isn't going to be out of place. It's just he's just not going to be as powerful as the wizard eventually. So that's what I like. So for me, I mean, by the time someone gets to fourth or fifth level, I mean, does a fireball do less damage than a cannon? Not really, right? So it's just that the wizard can't fire a cannonball as much. So you kind of have to be careful. Like I limit my ships are short, which means that they can't go as fast and they can't fit as many cannons. And the worst thing about bringing in anything with gunpowder is as soon as you give the players cannons, they can go and beat two Krakens if they have a good crew and then they have cannons. Like no problem. If like I remember they fought a sea turtle and I scalded half the crew and you can't evaporate someone against. We cooked half the crew on like the first attack by the dragon turtle, but then the players got a chance, including like a champion fighter who like critted, and next thing you know the dragon's just gone.
It's raining dragon turtle chunks.
Yeah, they just go down to the deep. Or I had a baby kraken on each bow and the stern, and the mother was like training them, right? Like, hey, go play with that ship. I'll keep you a backup. And they would have been a tough fight, but whatever. One of the wizards just sent them to another dimension or whatever.
Oh yeah, the banish.
Banishment. I was thinking it was dispel. No, it's banishment. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, so they just banished them. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you had that spell. Congrats on whatever it was, level 7 or 8 or something.
Oh yeah, I had a demon big bad in my spelljammer, and I literally ran like I just totally ripped off Star Wars and had them eaten by a giant space worm. But at the center of this giant space worm, there was a demon that was trapped. And yeah, I think the warlock just cast banishment. I rolled like a 4 on the saving throw. And they're like, well, that was a quick fight. Like there was all kinds of cool terrain set up and no.
Well, like baby krakens don't have legendary actions, and their mom had the lair actions and the legendary actions or whatever, all that. So legendary resistance and everything.
You're getting some love in the chat for the Dragonlance.
I remember I remember way back when I was playing Dragonlance. If anybody wants to take that love away, I always wanted to be Tass. I always wanted to be the Kender. I didn't want to steal from my friends. I just wanted to be like an ADHD kid in the fantasy world, because that's what I was, right? I couldn't sit in math class for an hour, and I don't think that Tass is going to sit there while they're talking to the Duke. You're going to wander off. So I always really like playing that, and I've seen some builds where people have taken the Kender and they've made it so that you don't steal from people. You randomly roll on a table and you'll happen to have it. Oh, I have like a kind of a class feature where it's like, oh, I've heard of that, or I know that info. Well, I have that in my pouch. And it's a lot better way to go and deal with it. And if it happens to be one of the other players' items, that's fine. They can get it back eventually.
It happens.
But you didn't steal it from. You didn't have to roll the pickpocket. Your ranger or something like that. Your grumpy wizard and lose a hand.
So Cody Sams wants to know, has working with many other writers changed your writing style over time? Picking up things you like along the way.
Yeah, I would say that like I'm probably more of a guy who wants to write top 10 lists, and I'm creative, and I wasn't really a crunch mechanic guy, just because I'd never done any homebrew before. And working with everybody else on Tribality who easily had been homebrewing and found 5th edition to be easier than ever, I picked that up quick. Like, so I went and found that working with all the other writers who were crunchy really helped me become more crunchy, I guess, if that's the word. So that was probably the big thing for me, because I'd always been kind of like, I don't care about rules. Let's just roll it. Let's just roll this. And I've become a little more, not a rule stickler, but a little more comfortable with like oh well, I'll write a rule for that. Like you know what I mean, or oh, I can come up with something for that really quick. Or well, that's a 1d10. Like I can just make a weapon up on the fly. You know what I mean? So I think that is something I didn't have before I started writing with everybody.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the things that uh, people don't get sometimes is like they want to know how you did it. They want to see the write up for the thing, and a lot of times there just isn't one. You know, because you guys do things on a website, that's different. But when you're just talking about things that happened in your game, and you know, oftentimes talking to other streamers and other people on video, like they'll get that question all the time. Well, how did you do the thing? How, you know, can we get that? Can we download that somewhere? And it's like it's just in here. I just made stuff up and so roll some dice.
Yeah, I think Matt Mercer's heart's probably still skipping a beat. You know, every time someone reads his gunslinger class that you know he just converted, and people were like, "We want this." He's like, "Oh man, I don't know," because I don't think he'd ever published a homebrew before he ever did that one, right?
Yeah, I think that was his first one.
Yeah, and I mean it's nerve-wracking, right? When you put and I put something out and 1,000 people read it over whatever a period of time. He put something out and 1,000 people looked at it that hour. Like,
Yeah.
That's nerve-wracking. I certainly wouldn't want to homebrew with that audience, like instantly. It's nice to gradually work your way into it, which I think is probably how most people aren't going to go and instantly be like, so let me see your homebrew. But these people, they'll do, you're on an actual play or whatever, and people pick it up, and I mean, look how many subscribers you have, right? If you guys didn't act, if you guys went and threw something out there, like there'd be a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to check it out. And if it was kind of like, we didn't really care, we're just throwing it up there. Next thing you know, you're getting torn into on Reddit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's tough. If you're gonna put something up there, get your smarter, crunchier friend to look at it, or put it up and say, I'm a first timer, I've never done this before. Be gentle, throw it up on Reddit, and people they'll be nice as long as it's well thought out and you're not asking like, hey, look, I made like another rogue. It's like, what? Why did you make a new class? We don't need that. So if you do something that doesn't make any sense, people are going to tear it.
Yeah, like that's always like the hard thing to figure out too is, what to add to the game and what not to add to the game, because people always want more options. They want more things, and as a GM, I generally am like, I can make whatever here is work usually. I usually don't worry about adding things. Like when my players wanted to play goblins, when 5th edition first came out, I didn't really worry about, well, what would a goblin stats really be like? What would their abilities really be? Because the players didn't care. They just wanted to have characters that they could say were goblins. So I was like, all right, let's just paint some halflings green and file off the serial numbers.
Totally, and that is a great. That might even be a better build. Like goblins seem a little overpowered to me. I don't know. Like I like them though, but
I think we like swapped out one thing. We swapped out Brave for Dark Vision, and we're like, good enough.
And, it doesn't matter. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, so my advice to someone new would be like, keep it simple. I mean, all your player wants to do is, I'll give you an example. I really like Overwatch, and I was playing. Do you know Overwatch?
I'm aware of it.
Okay, so the poster girl on Overwatch is Tracer. She can jump through time or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm like, I really liked Overwatch. I'm like, hey, it'd be cool. Like, what would I do if I wanted to play like a Chrono Rogue or something like that? So I wrote up like the subclass, and I'm like, I put it up, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I would ever play it, but just to kind of get it out of my system, right? But if you wanted to go and do that, you could just be like, hey, you go to your DM. It's like, I want to kind of run someone with some time travel. It's like, okay, well, let's just take a look at the Arcane Trickster's spell list and see if we can go and mess around with that a little bit. Like I remember someone came to me and they're like, I want to be an Arcane Trickster, and I don't want to multi-class, but I want to use evocation. Like I just want to blast things with fire. I'm like, okay, well, it's not what it's made for, but is it really going to wreck anything? So we started looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? It's probably better that you do this than you go and start dipping into Warlock or Wizard. So what are you going to do? As long as someone's not stealing the spotlight, and this can happen when you homebrew, even when even when you're a pro. You put something out there, and next thing you know, that player is just tearing into everything and leaving everybody just lower in the initiative order of like, well, I guess I'll fight something next turn or next fight. So that's the main thing. You need to be careful when you introduce a weapon, when you introduce a subclass, if you introduce a race, you know, try to match up to what your player, like, you know, I want to be Han Solo, I want to be a goblin, I want to be whatever. Try to match up to that without taking any of the fun away from somebody else at the table. And if you do that, you're fine. If you publish it on Reddit, you might need to do better than that.
That's good advice. Well, you know, even like using the example of the rogue that wants to cast evocation spells, it's like, well, it's not really a big deal because you can't sneak attack with a spell, and you know, unless you allow them to sneak attack with a spell. But you know, as a rogue, you just do more damage by stabbing it than you would with your highest level spell.
Yeah, like they had something from a fantasy book, or they had something, I don't know if the word's archetype, or they have, you know, people, they have this character in their head, right? And that's what they're trying to play. And, you know, I don't recommend going and saying, hey, I want to be this fully fleshed out, like I want to be like Han Solo. Well, Han Solo's got this giant backstory. He's a level 10 rogue. Like, you know,
yeah.
Go watch the movie Solo. That's who I want to be at level 1. I want to be a level 1 rogue like him or Orlando or whatever, right?
You just described that player that wants to come to your table with the backstory of, I'm a general in an army, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, son, you haven't done shit yet. So.
Well, yeah, I had somebody who's like, well, my backstory is I killed the dragon and now I'm a hero. I'm like, what? No, like, I'm like, you know, yes and? No and no. It's like, you know, it's hard to say yes and when somebody's coming to you. And so what does that even mean? How do you do it? And I'm like, okay, well, did you do it by accident? No, I was awesome. I'm like, so you like tripped in or you stole somebody's sword by accident? And no, I just killed it because I was awesome. I'm like, okay, well, all right, well, enjoy. I guess maybe you're not for our table.
Yeah. Like, yeah, if you killed a dragon, you can't be level 1. Now this is X amount of XP, you're this level, and you can't play in this game, sorry.
Well, like, you know, like the whole, you know, the drunken monk or whatever, like you're like, you know, like you're the stupid farm boy who killed something and now everyone thinks you're this powerful hero, right? That's a great backstory. That's taking the folk hero background to like level, like to the next level, right? Because you're not that person. That's a character I want to play. Where everyone, like, you know, and you go around, like, you know, give them some renown points or something like that. They come to the village, it's like, you're the famous Wesley.
Yeah. Now, had he said, like, you know, I was awesome, I killed a dragon, but with its dying breath, it cursed me, you know, it drained me and weakened me to, like, this is how I am now, then that could have been a cool backstory to work with, and you could have been, like, working to get back your power.
That works, too. Anything other than, like, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
No, I can just do it. Can you kill a dragon now? Of course. I'm like, all right, well, we're starting at level 1. We currently have the ability to swing once.
Yeah. And 15 hit points, if you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. The dragon's single claw will kill you in one shot.
Yeah. A dragon misses near you and you will die. What are you going to do?
You never know what you're going to get. I took a bunch of level 1 or level 2 players into a 4th edition Dungeon Delves book. It was great. When there was a dungeon for every level 1 to 20, I think. And I took them into the level 1 or level 2 to some dwarven mine. And they beat the white dragon in like 2 rounds. They almost got killed by the kobolds who were slinging scorpions and, you know, I don't know, honey and stuff at them. Whatever it is, scorpions with honey and ants. I don't know, you know, whatever that was killing them. But the white dragon was nothing. It's just funny. You never know what you're going to get with players in those early levels.
And that's true too. Like I had a group, they would house all my encounters, and then I hit them with like 2 wraith encounters back to back, and they just decimated them.
If you have a barbarian who's a problem, I recommend Riss. That necrotic damage is going to make life difficult for them.
It hurts a little bit. So Mr. Oz says, a little off topic, but I was playing D&D 5e campaign. I'm a level 3 monk and had to 1v1 a hill giant, fair fight. Now your DM's kind of being a dick.
Did you earn the one-on-one fight? Did you do something stupid?
Yeah. Now I'm totally for like having a kind of a organic world where things like that can happen, but you know, the idea that you're going to fight something that powerful by yourself doesn't seem right. Like I may put it in there, but you're only fighting it if you're dumb enough to try and fight it.
When you play Pathfinder or third edition or fourth edition, like every encounter is balanced. Fourth edition especially, like I knew that my level 7 players were going to be playing a level 7 threat, and I could take it out of the box and put it right into my game, onto my third encounter of this series of encounters, and I knew that was going to be a balanced fight. But what I like about fifth edition, and brings it back to a lot of these DMs who just straight up murdered me when I was playing first and second edition. I'm just some grade school kid. It's like, I got this really cool guy. He's sneaky, whatever. Yeah, well, he just died. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Because my sneak didn't work so well, and you die. There was cost. But I like the fifth edition kind of takes it halfway to that, where if you do something stupid in this world is going to punch you and kill you.
Yeah, I do like some of the things like the foul twice mechanic, or the foul by 5 mechanic, where they're kind of like bringing some of the deadliness back without the total like save or suck.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to get one-shotted for no reason just because
you rolled bad.
But if you do something stupid and then you roll a 1, maybe you deserve it.
Like one of my biggest pet peeves has been not being able to find like truly random encounter tables. So I like
write your own. There you go. There's a chance to homebrew them.
I'm also really lazy. I'm like
that's the dilemma, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I search for my own stuff all the time. I'm like, oh man, someone must have done this, or I want a new version of this. I'm like, oh, it's only me, and I didn't even finish this. Great.
Yeah. I'm like there's got to be a table where I can push a button somewhere. Although Nord Games did do random encounters by terrain, they did cards. And then I was like, I told him.
Go ahead.
The Kickstarter kicked a little while ago, so they should be coming out soon. But oh wait a minute, maybe I have them upstairs. But anyway, I buy so much D&D crap, and I don't even know what I have sometimes. But so it's by terrain, and then they had them listed by level on the card. And I was like, hey, can you just add a number in front of that? And they did. So now, like, you can pull the card and roll a D10, and you get a truly random encounter that may or may not be suitable to your level.
I mean, I think that the good thing about 5th edition versus 4th edition, I mean, I didn't have a problem with 4th edition. I think it's a cool game, but I kind of got sick of the complexity of the push this and the +2 to that, just the same as Pathfinder 3rd edition. The thing that's cool about 5th edition is that, if you want to play that way, you can. And if you want to go and play Where's Deadly, you can. And, I don't know what Pathfinder 2 is going to be like, but I hope if they've learned one thing from everything that's been going on the last, I guess, 10 years, right, is that, maybe your game should be able to go and play more than one way, instead of like, well, this is the way you play it. And if you don't play it that way, your character will suck and it's not fun. So if they learn that, if they get a little more flexibility, because I think there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, I use the books all the time for ideas, and even just to pull stuff out of it still. But I wouldn't want to play it now after playing 5th edition. The flexibility I have and kind of the leeway of which way I want to play. So I'd love to see Pathfinder be something that somebody who's enjoying the flexibility of 5th to be like, oh yeah, this is cool. It's like it's a little crunchier, which is something I'm moving into. And a lot of these 5th edition people who maybe haven't played before are kind of getting to that stage a lot of people did when 3rd edition came around. It's like, hey, this is cool. There's all these new things. Like there's like 19 different books on how to be a rogue. So if they're looking for more of that, it's like, maybe I'd like more than 2 books a year. So hopefully they can kind of react to that, and we get a full-blown edition war. That's what I want. Good for ratings.
Good for ratings. There you go. No holes barred.
Okay, give me the full-blown where there's like hate across the board, down the middle. Because that's what the world needs, is more of that. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah, there's not enough already.
Yeah, I'd rather everyone just get along. You know what? Play what you want, but I mean, again, if Pathfinder, the one thing I hope that they can go and do, and I haven't looked in that much detail, is having more than one. And I mean, some people would say I'm an idiot the way I'm talking, and like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But the way I feel is that it's a much more narrow way of playing in, say, Pathfinder 4th edition than 5th edition, which is, it's not like 1st edition where it's just basically like, you sit at a table and the guy rolls some dice for you behind the screen. But, it has a little more feeling of that, right?
Yeah, options are always good. The one of the great things about the hobby is whatever your play style is, you can find a game and a table that's gonna do that for you. And if not, create it.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, as someone who's in the industry, I can't even keep track of everything. It's crazy. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read Genesis, and like I read the thing, but I'm like, okay, well, what didn't I read this week? Like, you look at the release calendar now
Yeah.
around Gen Con, and it's like, how would you even read them all, right? Or I'm reading like, I'll read crazy stuff like Golden Skies, where you go and like, you play like a friendly little, I don't know, fox person who helps villagers.
Dude, that is literally one of the reasons why I just have people come on here and be like, they send me stuff to read. I'm like, can you just come on and tell me about it? And you can tell the audience at the same time.
Exactly.
Because there's just so much stuff, and I'll ask questions, and we can all learn together. Like you said, there is so much stuff out there. Someone had sent us Westward Bound, or Westbound, and it's like it's a 400 page book. I'm like, yeah, and people want us to do reviews of different things, and it's just like that's a lot of work to get two or three of us to read, a 400 page book and then review it. Plus you have to shotgun all that material so fast. It's like, how much of it are you going to even get right?
Reviewing is like the hardest thing I do. That is a trade. If you want to be a writer, I don't know, like do anything other than that. Write previews, write like your thoughts.
And then like the other thing is, I don't like to do bad reviews, right? I don't really want to do a bad review of something. So, so generally we won't. Like, we just would rather not touch it at all. There's so much good stuff out there I'd rather talk about.
You know what? I think it's easy not to write bad reviews, because if I can, as I start flipping through something, if it's bad, I'm not going to read it. So
Yeah,
I can't review it.
And at the same time, I get like the service you're doing to the community when as long as you can critique something in a constructive way.
Like when I try to write a review, I'm like, okay, I'm a DM who's okay. Like, let's look at Tomb of Annihilation. So I write a review for Tomb of Annihilation, and there's two people who I think are the audience for this book. Somebody who's going to run their own jungle adventure or even a full campaign, and they just want to steal stuff from it. So is it good? Like, Out of the Abyss, I want to go in the Underdark. Good, take that. Like, you don't need other books, just grab that. There's like chapters you can pull stuff from, all kinds of encounters, ideas, how to walk through the dark,
hazards, all kinds of cool stuff in there.
Yeah, or if you just want to run the adventure. So when we do the review, we're like, this is good for, like, I think Tomb of Annihilation is, like, someone's will go and say, this is really good for people who want to do a hex crawl. If you're looking for, like, a tightly packed narrative thing, like, maybe stay away from it, because it's a bit of a slog to go and hex crawl for, 2 months of a campaign.
It's a style play, so you have to be into that style.
Some people are like, oh, man, this is so better. Like, so much better than being on that railroad that I was on the other adventure. So I think that, whether it's the storylines or whether it's the adventure paths from Pathfinder or whatever else, they tend to have a variety, and I think that's a good thing. But I mean, there was a blog article that came out, I think it was last week, that blew up on Reddit a little bit, about how they were criticizing, like, the whole storylines and adventure paths as being too linear and not sandboxy enough, or too sandboxy, or not giving, and people are all over the place on it. Like, but so when we write a review, we basically just say is like, hey, this is a great source book, or this is good for if you have a party who really likes, like, tightly this, or if you have a party that wants to do a hex crawl, then it's good for you. So that's what the DMs are like. Well, you know what, my guys hate hex crawl, so I'll skip this book. There's nothing wrong with the book, right? Like, Tomb of Annihilation is the greatest or the worst adventure of all time, depending on if you like hex crawls or not.
That's a very valid point. Zareth Gaming, thoughts on creating characters based on characters from D&D stories, say, for example, Raceland Magier.
I think that if you want to go and read about a boy who has a strong twin and, has some kind of, like, guy in the village who wants to train him up, be that character. Maybe you become Raceland. Maybe you become, I don't know, Harstelaine or whatever. I don't even know. I'm trying to remember, like, the white robe guy. But why go and work your way back? But, like, Raceland's a great character because he's got this strong twin. He's the weakling. He's basically the crappy DNA matter on the side. Meanwhile, he becomes something great. And if that, and especially if you go and play like twins, I mean, like Critical Role, the twins in that in their last campaign was great. And if you can go and find somebody to be your brother and be that champion fighter, that'd be amazing. Are you guys, the only thing you have in common is you're twins, but you're that first day. You've grown up in that village, living in the trees, and maybe your sister ran off. You can have all that, but don't work your way back. And you know what? Even better, write your own. Look at that experience and say, well, what do I like about that? Well, I want to go and be the weak twin. So write that. Maybe you're both druids, right? And one of you is like the one who's not as strong, or maybe you're both, one's a strong ranger who runs around, the other person's just kind of like flighty and likes being a druid. Like, it could be any combo, right?
Yeah, I know. I like the idea of modeling for role-playing purposes when you're starting out and you're trying to figure out the game, and then hopefully you evolve from that. And not only that, like, don't try and, if you're not trying to create a carbon copy, basically, like you said, it's a great starting point. But as your character adventures, like, he should be shaped a little different, or she should be shaped a little different, according to the experience.
I'm jealous right now, like, because I'm always DMing, right? And I get to play, like, whenever we do a one-shot once every 2 months. And, like, I want to run this character, right? Like, I'm like, I want to be that guy now. I want to be that level 1 weak twin who's going to, be awesome when he, gets fireball, and when they're all getting surrounded by goblins, I just cast sleep. And they're like, well, where'd you come up with that? And, meanwhile, throw a curse in if you want. If you want to work with the DM and give them some kind of physical ailment, a 6 strength is or 6 con is a pretty big physical ailment. Like, you don't need to be drinking, tea to go and, the tea is just the way of role playing that weak constitution.
And not only that too, like, even 5e has some really good mechanics built in if you remember to use them, with the background stuff, with your flaws, your bonds, and that kind of stuff. You could use that and help develop it as well. So a stone.
Yeah, but why do you have to make sure that con isn't your lowest stat? Like, I know that maybe everyone has to protect you. That just gives you more points for something else, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe you could figure out a way to have it like 17 intelligence at level 1, and a pretty good dexterity, and really high wisdom. Throw take a 7 or 8 in con.
Oh, in my game, if you wanted to play a wizard with an 18 intelligence at first level, but you're going to take a 6 con, I will give that to you all day long.
Yeah, I will go and break the point buy system to go and say a 6 is worth an extra buff. Don't you worry.
Starting off with 4 hit points, that's the first edition experience all over again.
Yeah, but I mean, think about how powerful you're going to be. I mean, like, you're going to be people like the DC against you at level like 4 is going to be like, what? I don't even know. 3 + 5 is it? I don't even know. 8, 12. Like, it's going to be high.
It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be decent. I'm going to take one more question. From A Stone, newish DM, how do I make my players fear death and encounters that are meant to be solved without combat?
So, death, well, it's, it doesn't have to be death. It could be like a penalty. You could take something away from them. So, the whole idea of death being the only penalty to a player, I think, is probably the flaw here. So, you're going to go to prison. You're going to go and get all your gear taken away. You're going to die. You're going to go and lose reputation. You're going to get kicked out of the town. You're not going to be able to go back and see your mom. Those are penalties that are just as bad as dying.
Yeah.
So, if it's a social encounter or if it's exploration, you can go and do things like you can run exhaustion mechanics and things like that are going to go and make your next encounter tougher. So, really all a fight is doing to punish a player, if you're not killing them or give them the threat of death, if someone fights 1 fight a day, they're probably not going to die. But an encounter, a social encounter, if you take some of their stuff away, an exploration where you go and make them a little exhausted, or make them so that they didn't get there quick enough and now there's more enemies, or whatever else. So you can go and give them different types of threats, different penalties.
Yeah, the key too is not always having challenges in your world that are appropriate for your players. Like, if you build that expectation in your game, or maybe they've picked it up from previous editions or playing in other people's games, this is something you could do in a session 0 and be like, hey, I don't always use encounters that are appropriate to your level. So you're gonna have to decide. Your characters are gonna have to decide if they want to be involved in this fight or not. You know, and like and you know you can bring it back a little bit and train your players. I'm really big on training people to do the things you want them to do, especially in your game. You need to put encounters that have negative consequences that aren't death, but they clearly lose, so that they know that losing is a possibility.
Yeah, or you know, you can just at level 1 in that first encounter, somebody, if they make a mistake or they do something stupid, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and do this," and they're silly. Just kill them. Just be like, "Yeah, 3 goblins go and see you. They chase after you, and you're gonna fight them on your own because you're 120 feet away from everybody."
Jailhouse rules.
Yeah, you know, next thing you know, all right, looks like we're rolling a new rogue.
Yeah, sometimes, and that's the other thing. Sometimes you just need jailhouse rules to let them know. But you know, I'm really big on communicating, informing your players what kind of game this is, and then if they still don't hear you after that, then you might have to educate them in the game world a little bit, or maybe or you put. I would even say like you could put out overwhelming encounters, but I've seen players, they were like level 4 or 5. And I put a cyborg Empyrean in the game as a story element out of their reach, and they were trying to figure out how to get to it to fight it.
Players never learn unless they die.
sometimes.
But yeah, no, try to come up with other penalties so that they know that there's stakes at any tier of the game, or whatever you want to call them, phase. So, but yeah, like, I don't know, like, I mean, I see some really great actual plays out there where my favorite part to watch is when they're in town buying stuff. Because even that, they're trying to get things and they might not be able to get it. Like, if they really need to get potions, like, it might not be easy to get potions. Maybe they got to go and do a favor for this guy, right? And there's a cost there because, now that they're aligned with that guy, now this guy's an enemy and now they have a nemesis and a recurring villain. And, like, all these things have gone on. So, that's an urban campaign, but you're not going to be fighting hordes of goblins in an urban campaign. Like, it's a step up, and probably not something for a beginning dungeon master to run. Beginning dungeon master, make them, put them on a caravan, put them in the dungeon, fight some kobolds or goblins. But yeah, like, maybe it's your second adventure with your team and you want to try something different. Try doing social stakes. Exactly. Watch actual plays, read books, figure it out. I think that
check out some articles on Tribality. They probably
but I think that we've seen a lot of different stuff from Wizards of the Coast, that it's only a matter of time before we probably get that. I mean, we've seen jungle, we've seen dragons, we've seen whatever. So, we might see intrigue. Who knows? I know they've been talking about it here and there, even if it's not ever on. So that'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm
so we can get some. We can get some from up high. We can get some knowledge from the official books.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
or play, or like all that planar stuff everybody wants.
With that, Sean, I'm going to cut it off. We were past the hour mark.
All right, it's been a pleasure.
I've always got stuff to do, unfortunately, but it has been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on. Been chasing you guys for a little bit. Finally got you on here, which I'm so happy. It was good to hang out.
Life keeps you busy, but it's always good to chat about. Twist my arm to chat about RPGs.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime you want. Just hit us up. And thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us in the chat. Always appreciate you guys. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks for the questions, everybody.